Missile defense has re-emerged as a significant topic for military planners and politicians recently. The various conflicts in the Middle East, along with the Ukraine war, have brought this issue back to the forefront of military strategy. Israel has been at the center of the discussion for the longest time, routinely utilizing the Iron Dome, while also employing its David Sling, Arrow 2, and Arrow 3 defense missiles to a lesser extent. In response to the Ukraine war, Europe is developing its own anti-missile system known as the European Sky Shield Initiative, which has garnered the participation of 19 European countries in the development process. The United States is also working on creating the Golden Dome system to protect itself, with the possibility of including Canada in the future. Although these initiatives are not new in the history of warfare and have been attempted at various points in time, technology has indeed improved, but the strategic challenges that have historically undermined missile defense systems remain unresolved, potentially jeopardizing the current push for missile defense. In the closing stages of World War II, Germany introduced the world to missiles by unleashing two versions intended to alter the war's balance, primarily as terror weapons rather than for practical military use. The first was the Vergeltumswaffe-1, or Vengeance Weapon 1, more commonly known as the V-1, or the Flying Bomb and Buzz Bomb. The V-1 was a guided bomb typically launched from a ramp and powered in flight by a pulse-jet engine, which produced a distinctive buzzing sound. It had a range of 160 miles, 250 kilometers, and a maximum speed of 400 miles per hour, 640 kilometers per hour, carrying a warhead weighing 1,870 pounds, 850 kilograms, and cruising at altitudes between 2,000 and 3,000 feet, 600 to 900 meters. The V-1 is considered the first iteration of a cruise missile, and despite some initial success, it faced defenses such as fighter aircraft, ground-based anti-aircraft guns, and barrage balloons. The German Vergeltumswaffe-2, or Vengeance Weapon 2, known as the V-2, represented a more powerful version and a true ballistic missile. This innovation marked another significant breakthrough in military technology. However, similar to the V-1, it served primarily as a terror weapon due to its lack of accuracy, limiting it to use as an area weapon. The V-2 had a range of 200 miles, 320 kilometers, and could carry a warhead weighing 2,200 pounds, 1,000 kilograms. Powered by a combination of ethanol and water, this rocket could reach altitudes of 55 miles, 88 kilometers, in typical long-range engagements and achieve speeds of 3,400 miles per hour, 5,500 kilometers per hour. The altitude and speed of the V-2 rendered all defense systems ineffective against it. This development marked the beginning of a new era in offensive weaponry, prompting the search for defensive measures and the desire to create an anti-missile system. The first anti-missile system was the U.S. Army Nike Hercules, which was developed in 1958 and utilized either conventional or nuclear warheads to intercept incoming missiles. The Nike Hercules began deployments in U.S. cities, with Chicago being the first city to receive the system. By 1960, a total of 88 Nike Hercules batteries had been established to protect 30 states. In response, the Soviet Union initiated development of its first anti-missile system in 1956, eventually leading to the A-35 and the later nuclear-armed A-350 missile systems. Deployment of the Soviet system commenced in 1965 but faced delays due to cost and technical challenges. The financial burden and technical complexities of providing nationwide protection in both the U.S. and the Soviet Union rendered such systems prohibitively expensive. Consequently, by 1972, both nations signed the Anti-Ballistic Missile (ABM) Treaty. This treaty was amended in 1974 to restrict each side to deploying only one ABM system. The early issue with anti-missile systems, particularly regarding nuclear strategic deterrence, is that if an effective ABM system is developed, it could render the opposing side's nuclear arsenal obsolete, leaving one country vulnerable to nuclear blackmail. A straightforward solution, recognized early with both the Nike and A-35 systems, is that the best way to counter an effective ABM defense is to enhance offensive capabilities. For nuclear weapons, this meant producing more warheads, missile delivery systems, maneuverable vehicles, and decoys. The strategy to defeat ABM systems involves overwhelming them with numerous targets. With the introduction of MIRV warheads that included decoys, it became much cheaper to produce additional offensive weapons than to create and deploy a viable defense shield against a growing offensive threat. The strategic dilemma of overcoming a defensive system with greater offensive capabilities remains unresolved, even with today's advanced technology. This does not imply that the pursuit of effective missile defense has been abandoned. The next significant effort in this area was President Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative, commonly referred to as Star Wars. Although this initiative never approached substantial development, the U.S. continued its pursuit of missile defense. Technological advancements eventually led to the U.S. withdrawing from the ABM Treaty in 2002, subsequently pursuing various anti-missile systems, including the Ground-Based Mid-Course Defense (GMD) system based in Alaska and California, THAAD, Terminal High-Altitude Area Defense, Patriot PAC-2 and PAC-3 missiles, as well as Aegis-based SM-3 and SM-6 missiles. Despite improvements in anti-missile systems compared to earlier versions, the U.S. does not have an integrated missile defense that utilizes all available systems. Instead, it has deployed various weapons with anti-missile capabilities. In contrast, Israel has established an integrated missile defense system, largely benefiting from the country's small geographic size. This situation does not apply to the U.S. or Europe in their efforts to develop an integrated defense system. Even with the effectiveness of Israel's multi-layered defense system, it still faces the missile defense dilemma. During the recent conflicts with Iran, this system demonstrated its ability to intercept Iranian missiles. However, as the 12-day war in June 2025 progressed into its second week, the kill ratio began to decline, primarily because Israel needed to conserve its defensive missiles. It became evident that Iran possessed more missiles to launch against Israel than Israel had interceptors, despite Israeli airstrikes targeting both mobile and static launch sites. Iran has the capability to produce more and cheaper ballistic missiles than Israel's ability to manufacture high-precision defensive missile interceptors. The U.S. Navy faced a similar challenge during its defensive operations off the coast of Yemen, where Houthi rebels launched missiles at U.S. ships. Responding to these attacks would necessitate the use of expensive missiles. The situation became significant enough that U.S. admirals acknowledged the need to develop a more cost-effective and sustainable solution for intercepting Houthi missiles and drones. The simple truth is that advanced anti-missile interceptors, in addition to being expensive, have longer production times compared to standard intermediate and long-range missiles. This creates a significant obstacle in keeping up on a missile-for-missile basis with interceptors. This issue highlights that the solution to countering missile defense lies in increasing offensive capabilities to overwhelm the system. Examples of ABM interceptor per unit cost: US dollars United States Patriot PAC-3, $3.7 million Standard Missile 6, $3.9 million Standard Missile 3 Block IB, $9.7 million THAAD, $15.0 million Standard Missile 3 Block IA, $27.9 million Ground-Based Interceptor, $70.0 million Israel Tamir, Iron Dome $100,000, not used for ballistic missiles. Arrow 2, $3 million Arrow 3, $62.0 million sample of Iranian ballistic missile costs, Ahmad, MRBM $250,000 Shahab 1, MRBM $1 million Shahab 3, MRBM $3 million Gadr 110, MRBM $5 million. The other issue is that, despite technological improvements, nearly all defense systems can only engage missiles during their final flight segment. A ballistic missile's flight path is divided into three phases: the boost phase, which includes the launch and acceleration, the mid-course phase, when it flies toward the target after the boosters have finished firing, and the terminal phase, which involves atmospheric re-entry and descending to the target. The terminal phase is currently the only phase in which anti-missile systems can effectively intercept their targets, making it the most perilous point for interception. During this phase, there is no margin for error. A miss is critical unless multiple missiles are employed to target a single incoming missile. Even if an intercept occurs but fails to destroy the warhead will still impact, although it is likely to miss its intended target. The U.S. Navy has tested the SM-3 missile, which theoretically has the capability to intercept targets during the mid-course phase, provided it is positioned correctly. This potential capability represents a significant advancement in ballistic missile defense. If interceptions can be achieved during the mid-course phase, it would decrease the need to address decoy warheads or warheads with maneuvering capabilities. The U.S. and European plans to develop an integrated missile defense system seem justified, particularly in light of the experiences from the Iran-Israeli conflicts and the Ukraine war. However, despite this justification, the strategic dilemmas that existed during the 1950s to 1970s remain unresolved, even with advancements in technology. While a defense system can provide temporary protection and offer limited defense against adversaries with constrained resources, such as North Korea, its capabilities are ultimately limited at this time. The Golden Dome has a 3-year cost estimate of $175 billion, €150 billion, while the European Sky Shield initiative is expected to cost even more, as Europe lags behind the US in technology deployment, with estimates starting at a couple of billion euros. Is this the direction that the US and Europe wish to take? Would effective civil defense *, infrastructure hardening *, and increased offensive capabilities be a more favorable approach for deterrence than a system that nearly guarantees a strategic arms race? It is commendable that countries in North America and Europe are considering ways to protect their populations. However, the dilemma faced during the Cold War persists and is unlikely to change with current technology. Note: civil defense and infrastructure hardening in themselves can be escalatory against an adversary that relies on strategic counter-value targeting, mainly a strategic nuclear doctrine.